Things happen. There I am. Hooray! Yes, I hear my audio. Y'all good?
Are
I
you
can
like a
hear you this
smaller?
time.
Are you trying to make your head look smaller?
I'm a little bit smaller. I've shrunk. Yes. Hello, folks. Can you hear? Can Damien or Scott? Can you speak?
Yes. Hello. 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 Hello.
All
Hello.
right.
Hello.
Let us know on the Twitch if you can hear okay, or the YouTubes. Wonderful. Things are happening. Hooray!
Yes.
They can hear.
Yes.
Wonderful. Hooray! Okay. It's been a
That's a
bit.
low bar. That's a very low bar.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we.
That's it for this week. Hooray!
Good night, everybody.
Wait,
See how
so-
it's like moving us? If we move our heads, it like camera moves us, doesn't it?
it's like you're on a
does?
boat.
Oh yeah, because he hasn't done fit to frame. He's just letting Teams do its thing.
I'm happy to fit you to the frame if you'd like.
Oh well, then we'll have black borders, but that's fine.
It's a trade-off.
Needs to be
Everything in life.
composed.
I gotta step out. The kids are screaming. 1 second.
That was a short run. How you doing,
Well,
Damien?
well, we got handsome for a minute, and well, I guess with that we'll cut over to the community links for this week.
Yeah, why
shall
not? Why not? Okay, boom, boom, boom. Community links. I only have a few this time, but they're quality. Let's start out. So Shahed, this is the letter Z, meaning he is wrapping up yet another 26-part series on ASP.NET Core. So this is about zero downtime web apps for ASP.NET Core 3.1. So he walks through, some important different things to know about, including setting your availability, backup and restore are important. Of course, so he's got CI/CD and of course deployment slots, including using warm-up. Then he also talks about feature flags and EF Core migrations. So we just had a recent show about feature flags, very important stuff. So all these things together, really helpful for zero downtime. But the main reason I'm sharing this is congrats, Shahed. This is freaking wonderful. Like, this is years in a row that he's been doing these, and just huge kudos to you. So these quality blog posts, these series, well done to you, sir. Moving on. .NET Conf, we've got the focus on microservices coming up. So this is in 29 days. You can see the countdown now. So a lot of good stuff coming up, and focus on microservices stuff. We also have the 3D effect .NET bot, which is neat.
Ooh, that's fancy.
Yeah. Okay, here's a fun one. This is a post on Blazor, and switching on over using the translate, which actually does really well. So this is a post on using or developing browser extensions using Blazor in C#. So this is something I was playing with on Friday and Saturday, was just like, is it even possible to build a browser extension doing all the, because it can be a little complicated, the front end work. And I was like, could I just write this in C#? And it turns out you can with some minor workarounds. So Keymoon here writing this up and talking about the different things, including the interop both ways from JavaScript to C#, because the APIs for browser extensions, and of course now Chrome and Edge or Edgium are using the same APIs. The only exception being for identity. But everything else is the exact same APIs. And so this is pretty cool. You can develop these. Those APIs are in JavaScript, so you need to interop back and forth. So pretty straightforward, both of these invoking both directions, the standard interop stuff. This is, I think, a kind of neat thing. A lot of browser extensions are going to be using requests, and so it's nice to be able to use the HTTP client from C# and .NET that we're familiar with. So that's a nice thing. This is kind of one of the most important parts here, is this publishing bit. And the reason is because where things are located for a browser extension is very specific. They need to be in specific places. Manifest needs to be exactly in a place, and you can't have dots in a name. That you need to use like underscores instead, etc. So here's the standard. Here's the commands for moving things, like first publishing and then moving from a bin to a separate folder and that kind of thing. But overall, pretty straightforward. So this is very cool. And always happy to include, multilingual, not just the English language things that we normally do. So please, let me know if you see cool links, and I will happily share them.
That's a super good point.
Yeah, and there's some minor kind of quirky things, but the browser translation pretty darn good. Like, it really wouldn't, for most parts, like it's completely readable. So
right.
All right, this is a cool post on RabbitMQ microservices. So just a pretty straightforward walkthrough, talking about how to develop using ASP.NET Core and using mass transit and Docker. So this is just kind of a nice straightforward a walkthrough talking about both publishing, subscribing to the services, and also talking about an advantage of using mass transit is that it's agnostic, so you could switch over to another messaging provider if you wanted to. So some nice stuff here. And then if you want to, there's also the code is out on GitHub, as well as some other cool stuff here. So this is from Damien Daumer, and he's got some other neat stuff, including some Xamarin stuff recently. Good job. All right, Sarab, posting on ASP.NET Core updates in .NET 5 Preview 6. So the Blazor WebAssembly template is now included. That's not a separate install that you have to do. Also, JSON extension methods. Several things in here for the whole route to code. So things like JSON extension methods. Hello, nice, good to see you.
Have we used that term before? Do folks know what we mean when we say route to code?
I think very high level. I don't think we've done an in-depth thing. So there was a recent on.NET show, and I included that in a community stand-up link. And I think I'm not sure, honestly. I think we need to do kind of a deep dive and get some folks on to go into that in more detail.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it's what Hunter calls it, but it's basically doing slimmer APIs, right? HTTP APIs. So think of, rather than using API controller and doing your services that way, you just want to have a route and then a method, and you don't want anything else. That makes some things harder, obviously, because you don't get a bunch of the features. And so we have a longer term plan to try and figure out what are the sort of most useful features that folks would want in that sort of very slimmed down API. So with routing, you get authorization. We added that in 3.0. So because of the endpoint routing system, you can very easily route, get your data from your route, and then you can add metadata to the route, including authorization. And then the authorization middleware will honor that. These new extension methods, as you said, now you can read and write from the request using JSON, which is nice. But
there's also
we'll have to go further.
This anonymous access one, that seemed like also something that'd be pretty
Yes, that makes it a lot easier now to punch a hole basically in a global authorization policy that you might have set in the middleware, but then you want to have one endpoint that is set as anonymous. That was really difficult to do before. So
now my understanding with some of this is that it originally it made sense because of Blazor, and then was more widely applicable, or is that not true? Maybe I misunderstood that.
What was that, sorry?
What was the origin? Where did this come? Just the general idea is we just want to make it lightweight to build an endpoint. That's real.
Yeah, I mean, some of it was as a result of like the whole microservices movement. Some of it was how quickly can I just get from like a thing to code without having all the stuff going on that's in MVC. Sometimes you want all the features in MVC. You want to be able to plug in and get, metadata. You want to be able to plug in and, in order to do Swagger or all that type of stuff. And there are other ways to do that as well, obviously. But it really was about how can we make the most lightweight sort of endpoints that we possibly can, but still be able to have those common concerns like authorization and logging and config and DI and that type of stuff. MVC brings with it a whole bunch of other stuff that has been there forever since MVC 1, and a lot of the stuff even in ASP.NET Core MVC is there due to backwards compatibility or making it at least easier to port MVC 4 and 5 apps over to ASP.NET Core MVC. And so longer term, a lot of those things are features that would be useful to have in the wider ASP.NET Core. So that if you just want to write some middleware, but you want to be able to do some type of action style processing, today that requires you to use MVC. We don't have that capability in ASP.NET Core itself. And so we talked about this, I think, in a few shows, maybe last year, this Project Houdini, which is how do we make MVC disappear over time by bringing more of its features that would be useful commonly down into ASP.NET Core as individual subsystems, like model binding and routing. Routing was the first one. And the cause handling and the authorization handling, and now, rather than being baked into MVC, they're separate middleware that all the frameworks can use, like Signaler and any other framework, like Kata, for example, uses them as well. So
nice. All right, the last link I had was this one that Scott wrote up, which was on Blockly. And I thought this is really cool. Like, of course, there's kind of the standard. You can use different, like Postman or stuff to call into APIs. But this is a really just kind of nice, lightweight way to visualize and call into an API. So this whole Blockly language, and this is, I believe this is using, is this Blockly JS? There's some different kind of wrappers that people have built around Blockly, and this whole kind of visual coding thing's pretty.
So the idea with this is that they're looking at the Swagger that comes out of it, and they're able to then generate Blockly blocks. So if you see that purple one there, could you hit Control plus a couple of times?
All right, let's go back to.
Oh, now he's back here.
Yep, now I'm back to the purple blocks.
Okay. So the purple block there that says weather forecast is a generated block, right? So that came out of the absorption of the Swagger. And then you can go and do your for loop and your variables around it and then run that. And then when you run it, it runs as JavaScript on the browser calling that JSON endpoint. Cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting, this whole kind of block programming style. With my kids, with some programming stuff, it's a nice kind of lightweight way to visualize programming, but then also even just kind of as a professional programmer, I just want to take a quick look at hacking some stuff with this API that could be pretty useful too. Cool. All right. Well, that is all the links I have. I will share them out. And they're, as always, they're also included in the YouTube show notes. And that's it. Oh, and of course, very important, QR code. There you go. Wonderful. Okay. Well. Wow. So when was the last show the three of us were on? 18...
Oh, goodness.
It's been a bit.
Long time ago.
Has it been that long?
It's been a while. Yeah.
I think it's been quite a while, yeah.
So, good times.
What have we been up to? Scott, you've been busy. You did like a build thing.
I have been currently working on I've been nesting is what I've been doing. I wrote a blog post. You can take a look on nesting, setting up your space, your personal space with intention. Mm-hmm. I think you also have been nesting. I think that's a fair statement, Damien.
Yeah, absolutely. You can kind of see a little bit more of my office this way. So there you go. There's a different view. You can see me and my screens and whatnot. I can go even wider if you want me to. I think I can go like all the way out here. Wow. There you go. So.
That's a little extra.
Cameras.
It's a little bit extra, given that there's no value provided by any of those things that you. Both. So I installed this light, which is a plastic light from a company called Light Effects. One of the things that I like about my office that makes me happy right now is I want my office to look like $1 million, but only cost $100. That's the goal. Can you hit dismiss on that thing at the top there in Teams, John, by the way? So these are shelves from IKEA with toys in them. There's the Zimbabwean flag for my guys on the chat that are giving me a hard time for my lousy Zulu. And I've got my Surface Book 3, and then I bought a TV set that I'm very excited about. This TV here with this tiny little wire here. And then I put my Xbox and my PlayStation down, right? And then this right here is actually coming off of this laptop.
Right.
So this is using it's using Miracast with the Microsoft wireless adapter. And I got it for like $20, $25 on eBay. They're $50 new. The TV was only $600. So I'm trying to make the most out of my personal space,
right,
without having to like spend any real cash, because I'm here all the time, right? So I'm digging it.
That's good. Yeah, I've done similar things. Like I've got this is a light strip that is compatible with Philips Hue, as is that, because that's a Philips Hue one over there. So I can say, hey Google, make the lights orange, and then in theory the lights go orange.
Now we can do that too.
Now everyone who was listening who has the same setup at home.
Mine's called the Office Beam. I don't know if it works. Alexa, set the Office Beam to green.
Ooh, nice. Very nice.
So mine's actually set up if I just think turn blue.
And so, and then obviously, Scott has a nice camera. I have a nice camera. I accidentally bought two, and so I have a separate one behind me here, which I've set up on this mobile rig with another light. And so it has a power strip on the bottom, so I can take it anywhere in the house with a laptop and do streaming from anywhere. And I intend to try and do that on my driving rig, which is on the other side. And folks follow me on Twitter may have seen me doing stuff with the driving stuff before. So that's kind of fun.
People are teasing us sometimes about the lighting.
You think so?
I've heard people say that we're going a little over the top, but when it comes to nesting,
yes,
there's a value in that. It changes my mood. And the other thing is, do this for me, Damien. Set it to purple, the same color as the community stand-up purple.
That's what I had it as before, yeah.
And look,
let me do that by phone. Let me see if I can really dial it in.
How lovely that is! It just changes your mood, changes the whole vibe.
I agree. So let me move
like
that.
It's mood lighting
down to here. There we go. A little bit more blue. Oh, about there somewhere.
It's more of a pink.
Oh, boy.
That's the color of John Galloway's bald head.
I have my lights purple too. I'm trying to color match everyone.
Well, now it's blue.
I have a purple head.
There we go.
Oh, there you go. Are we going blue now?
I don't know. So I've been doing a bit of that, and then I moved this office around just this week because I ran out of space and I needed to eject some things and put some new things in. So I'm still doing that. I bought my conference badges. I've mounted those up here now. They were in a box back at the office, and I went and picked those up.
I had that exact pile of conference badges, and I just gave up.
You gave up? I've got badges here.
I heard if you get 1,000, you can trade them in for something.
It was for me, it was a clutter thing. I have recently re-uncluttered my personal space, and I like it better this way.
Well, I've just ordered a shelf to come in here, so that's going to be arriving in the next few days.
Yeah,
what you've got there, and I'll be able
that electrical thing there in the back wall is causing me problems.
That?
Yeah.
Why is it causing problems? It's just a power strip with one light in it.
So I recently got a new power strip. I'll bring it up and I'll show you.
Yeah.
And I'm really enjoying it. It's basically what's the word? It's completely flat. So take a look at this. I guess I can't share my screen, can I, John Galloway? Take that out of the chat.
Okay.
And then share it yourself.
You could share it. It's just a Teams call. So if you want to,
it is?
just go back to.
Right.
Oh, you're great.
I didn't know that was allowed.
Now I've messed everything.
There we go.
up.
Yeah, I can.
Where am I now?
What are you doing, John Galloway?
I don't even know. What the
sharing
heck?
someone's desktop.
Oh my goodness. Okay, they make it a little hard. How do I go back to the call? In this view, how do I go back to this call?
Go to the calendar and join the call again. I don't know. It should be.
Right?
It's Alt-Tab your way to glory.
Isn't it in the top left-hand corner?
Oh, that's it. That's the problem. I'm still not used to this. That it's a separate window.
Oh,
I'm still
you're
thinking.
in a separate window.
Yeah.
So this thing here, Damien.
Yep.
See how it looks like?
That is pretty.
Okay.
Here. How's that?
Yep.
That's how they plug in Star Trek.
So that thing there just sits flat, and then what you do is you bury it under your carpet or your floor.
Yes, that's interesting because I bought similar ones, but they weren't that flat. They were just right angle extension.
Yeah, no.
Like
so this
6 inches long.
This is aggressively flat.
That is aggressively flat. I like that. it is grounded, right? It's earthed. Is it earthed?
Yeah, it's a fully grounded, but it also ends in an actual.
Oh, in a 3 outlet strip. Okay. I will look at one of those.
Now you need
throwing that out there, but.
This is nesting. This is exactly what we're talking about. And like, there's always something new in here for me to put some sound absorbing panels up in places. You know,
owning your space. I'm also really getting into the PoE lifestyle, the power over Ethernet lifestyle.
Ooh, yes, indeed. No, I put some cameras up last week.
I've got my Raspberry Pi, one of my many Raspberry Pis, or as they say in your country, Raspberry.
Raspberry.
Raspberry. I don't know. Sorry. So this has got a PoE hat on top.
Yep.
So this hat then plugs into my little router deal here.
Scared him away.
He's run away.
I'm sure he's going to get one of his own.
But power over Ethernet is great because I don't want to now he's got a thing. He's coming back with a thing.
Speaking of PoE, I stuck one of these on the back of the house last week.
Oh, those are great.
The Flex.
I got one.
I didn't, my PoE feed to it wasn't high enough wattage. So I can only feed it about 20 watts from the existing switch I have, which is the 8-port Ubiquiti.
Why so little?
Because I don't have 802.3 BT support, which is what does 6. So I had to buy one of these, which just arrived today. This is a PoE power injector. And this is the industrial size one that can put 60 watts into it.
Because the switch that you have, the Ubiquiti switch, does not have the chutzpah?
I don't have the Pro version of the 24-port switch. I only have the Gen 2 version. And the Gen 2 24-port switch does not support the BT standard, which is what you need to get 60 watts.
Why do you need so much wattage?
Because this switch, I'm then driving 4 devices off.
Oh, okay.
Wireless access point and 3 cameras.
I got you. Okay, that's the issue. So
that's the issue. And specifically at night when the camera's IR, like LEDs turn on, is when it starts like overdrawing and the camera's turning.
And how do you know? You get a notification?
You can look at the management software tells you how much power is currently being drawn by every device. And then when the camera started disconnecting, I was like, that's odd. It's drawing 20 watts. I'm like, oh, wait, that's the limit. That's why they're starting to disconnect. So that's my job.
Okay. So
hang
that. On, John Galloway.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yeah, I have the exact same thing. Yes.
So
if I go and have a look at how much is being power is being drawn, just go to any of the switch ports or any of your managed switches. You'll get a total power draw for the switch, and then for any device or port, you can see how much is being drawn by that one device.
Okay.
So what all do you power off of it?
So that's a great.
All the devices that make up the network.
So here's my personal network.
Yeah.
And here's my switch. And if I look at the switch, I can hover over anything with a plus.
Oh.
Yeah.
And it'll tell you, see, it says PoE 4.23 watts, 4.5, 4.6, 5.7, 2, 5.7, 4.7, 7.8.
And you should have see down the bottom, go further. It says 43 watts total draw.
Is that bad?
Yep.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
No, it just means that's how much your entire switch is currently issuing out.
Okay.
As
so
PoE.
Then on my desk, I have this little guy. Okay, so now watch this. Can they still see me, John, or they only see a screen?
They see me and the screen.
Okay.
They can see you the size of a thumb.
Actually, they do see you down tiny in the corner.
Okay, so tiny in the corner. Here's the Raspberry Pi. I'm plugging it in with a Ethernet cable, and I'm going to plug it into my desk. No actual power. Now it's immediately turned on, and a light has appeared on the Raspberry Pi.
Right.
I can hear the fan. Now let's see. Look.
That's so cool.
See that where it says PoE 2.93 watts? So it's booting up the Raspberry Pi on my local desk here, and it's pulling 3 watts.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm here to ask the hard questions. Aside from Raspberry Pis and switches.
Does it run .NET? It does.
Cameras.
Cameras, okay.
So
that was my question. What's the practical
well, let's look at cameras then.
So Unify also has lights as well. So You can power VoIP telephones, you can power lights, you can power cameras, and obviously the network, the Wi-Fi and the switches are all powered by Power over Ethernet as well. And as Nick pointed out in the chat, it means it can all be backed up by a single UPS. And so, because everything routes back to your closet.
Right. Yep. So this is the driveway in 4K.
Yep.
And it looks great, and it's all powered entirely by one wire.
It's very cool.
And it's been up for a month.
Yep.
So if I had one of those running, it could have captured on video the opossum that ran into our house Sunday night.
Yeah, indeed. I captured a chipmunk digging up the pots in the front porch a couple of weeks ago, and we captured a bobcat in the backyard a couple of days after that.
Wow.
And so I'm hoping
there's always a bear or something.
What's that?
It's like they know that you're Australian and all the animals
they come for you.
I've got one extra camera to put in, and I'm hoping to put it in as a critter cam, so right back at the back corner of the garden, pointing out at the forest. And hopefully I'll get some good shots. Maybe one day we'll get a cougar if I'm super lucky.
Before I forget, while we're gushing about stuff that's not ASP.NET,
yes,
we have our Ubiquity networking show. That's a regular networking cable.
Oh, you're going to show their cool patch cables?
Patch cable. Why do I even care? They're gorgeous.
They're beautiful patch.
That's like a guitar cable.
They're tiny. They are
super
the best quality networking cable I have ever seen. They disappear on the floor.
So I have.
Look at that.
This is a different one, but it's this one. I have the Unify ones for the patches. This is a monoprice Slim Ethernet cable. So I have a couple of different brands of those Slim Ethernet cables, which I use. Very nice. And I have the ribbon.
Michael Powell saying there's no thing as patch cables these days. I literally I've got a kit right here. This is how hardcore I am. What do we call them, Michael Powell?
Crimpers.
Such thing as what do we call them?
Crimper.
No, but I'm saying I call them patch cables. But yeah, I mean I crimp my own stuff.
Yeah, so do I.
I got a whole kit, so I'm not messing around.
Mine's next door. So I've been doing that.
Though, it's not required to be a successful ASP.NET programmer, though.
Not at all. It's just,
It's just fun.
What did we say? What did you call it? Nesting. Network nesting.
So we make the code simpler and simpler, so you have more time to.
The other thing I wanted to call out while I'm loving these people is I got one of the Unify Flex Minis.
Oh, I've got.
Such a dork.
See, you've got them all right at hand. Damien's got to run for all his.
I don't know why he always runs. I never run for anything.
I got two of those right here. I haven't used.
Oh, they're just a joy. They're a lovely, lovely thing.
Yeah. What are they? $20? $25 or something?
Oh yeah, they're nothing.
Yeah, and they're managed too. So.
Oh, that's nice.
You get all the managing goodness of them. So yeah, so I've been doing that as well, Scott. I mean, I've been spending a bit of time on weekends, adding cameras and doing switches and, optimizing it all. I got an outside Wi-Fi access point so I can be in the hammock and I still get Wi-Fi, which is nice. All that good fun. But yeah, your office looks great. I've also been working on ASP.NET though. So
how so?
Yeah. Well, so one change this week that we are getting in is those of you who have used .NET Watch. .NET Watch has never been particularly fast. And so we were having a look at what we can do in the time left with the folks that we have for .NET 5. And so we identified one very simple thing, which was .NET Watch at the moment is architected very much as an outside-in observer. So it kind of orchestrates the monitoring of file changes, which you can edit using MS-Build metadata. So the first thing it does is when you fire it up, it says, oh, let me figure out what files to watch by doing an MS-Build evaluation. It basically runs its own target in your project to figure out what files to watch. So that has a cost, right? To invoke MS-Build, boot a process, JIT MS-Build, invoke it, all that type of stuff. And then it starts monitoring those files. And then after executing the command you wanted, so like build your app, start your app because you called .NET Run. And then whenever a file changes, that cycle would repeat. So what was evident was that a lot of the time when a file was changed was taken up with rerunning that MS-Build evaluation to figure out if you had changed any of the file watch configuration. And then secondly was doing the NuGet restore, even though you haven't changed anything that pertains to NuGet. And so we made a quick optimization to .NET Watch, or we're about to. It's in PR at the moment. that will not do those two things if the file that was changed wasn't an MS build file. Right, so if it wasn't your CS proj, your VB proj, or your FS proj, or it wasn't a .props or a .targets file, then we just assume, well, you obviously haven't changed the MS build metadata to do with what files to watch, and you obviously haven't changed anything that can affect NuGet. If you changed a NuGet.config file that was further up in the file system, we won't detect that. We didn't anyway, and you would have to go and restart anyway. But that pulled a full second off a previous test that we had that was 2.5 seconds. So we got down from 2.5 to 1.5 seconds on that particular machine. On slower machines, the impact would be even bigger. And then the next thing we want to do is do a similar optimization for if we detect it's a CSHTML file that you edit, then we can just re-invoke the razor target rather than rebuilding the entire app, and that will speed that up. And then we've got a bunch of other changes that we want to investigate, which are a little more expensive. And then further on, looking out to .NET 6, we want to do a whole bunch more work here to really rethink how that whole inner loop of detecting a change and then getting the change built and delivered into your application, hopefully your running application, as quick as possible. And that's something that there's a whole suite of technologies and techniques that we're going to look at. Some that are already being utilized in other .NETs, like Xamarin has some stuff that they're doing. They showed off at Build a prototype of a C# hot reload that they're using, or looking at building into Mono that utilizes a method body replacement. I know that there are aftermarket build tools you can use today that do IL weaving. And so they will weave indirection stubs into every method in your code and every property. And then they have a build server that when it detects, very much like .NET Watch, when it detects a change, it rebuilds the app, or it just builds an expression tree of the change code. It sends that over to the application over like a socket or something like that. And then it compiles it in your application. And then the stub that they put in there during the initial build redirects that over there. That's good for redirecting existing code. It doesn't help you if you add a property or add a field or add something to, add a new constructor or add a new type, right? Because there was no stub to begin with because the thing didn't exist. Then you need more advanced techniques. And so those things that we don't really have good examples of .NET app models that are doing that today, like they can handle that type of change. And so those are things that we want to look at as we start thinking further ahead to .NET 6. I mean, all of this is so that we can, as a developer, you make a change and you see that change reflected in your running application as quick as humanly and technically possible. And depending on the type of change you make, we may utilize a different technique to get that change into the application. Because obviously, if you change something in program main, we may have to do more work than if you just updated some HTML in a razor view, right? And so it's going to be a combination of those things working in harmony that we hope will give you the best sort of end-to-end inner loop. So that's something that I've been spending a bit of time looking at. And as I said, we'll get a couple of things in .NET Watch for 5, and then looking further forward to 6, we'll be doing some bigger things, hopefully.
That sounds useful in combination with some of the stuff that they're doing also with the web tooling for like the, I think of it as browser link, but it's like the next thing of that, right?
Yeah, so they have the live preview, I think they call it. And so that's come about. That's in preview now. Folks can try that out. It works in web forms and it works in non-core Razor, and there's a whole bunch of
okay.
It doesn't work in ASP.NET Core yet. It's really designed around a slightly complementary but somewhat overlapping set of scenarios. And so it is similar you can think of it as similar to the XAML hot reload technology that WPF has, where you typically historically have used a designer, or you edit some type of markup like XAML in this case, which is separate to your code. Your C# is in a different file, right? And then while the app is running, it'd be nice if you could kind of just patch in changes to the running DOM, whether it be HTML or XAML, a XAML DOM in the case of WPF or UWP or Xamarin Forms, based on what you had done in the editor or the designer, right? And that's how XAML hot reload works, and it's also how this new web live preview technology works. So it makes assumptions and it understands the type of edits that have taken place in the editor, and then using metadata that sort of flowed from the editor all the way through the built application to it running in your browser. That's the browser link you were referring to before. it knows that like this H1 came from this file and this block of code in that file, right? Because we keep all that metadata. And then that way, when you make a change in the editor, it can go, oh, I know what element that's currently in the browser that's linked to. So let me just evaluate the change you made. And then based on the type of edit that you did, I will make a best guess approximation as to what patch I have to basically apply to the DOM to reflect whatever you just did over in the editor. We really see this as being a helpful tool for folks who had traditionally used something like the web forms designer. We still have hundreds of thousands of people who use web forms. And the designer was unfortunately based on a code base that stretches all the way back to front page. Wow. Anyone use front page? And so it was very difficult for us to do things like make that accessible, right? And to keep it up to date with web standards and those type of things. And so it's a much better approach to expose some of the types of things that used to happen in the designer directly in the browser. And that's kind of where the live preview technology is going to come in, hopefully, and fill that gap. And then on top of that, because of its understanding and its link between the browser and the editor or the IDE, we can do complementary tooling that you can't do with just hot reload. The hot reload is about getting your changes compiled and into the running application. These types of tools are more about having a really good understanding of what code resulted in what, UX or whatever, whatever's happening in your browser right now. And then there's a whole suite of tools that could come out of that. And there really isn't much, to our understanding, there isn't really a set of tools like that on other stacks at the moment. A lot of other stacks have hot module reload or hot reload, which is incredibly, basically you need it now, right? If you're going to be a new stack, you really need to build that in from the beginning, and we're trying to retrofit it, which is why it's taking a bit longer. But there's a whole bunch of other tools that could be interesting around mapping source code to what's running in your app and giving you a nice sort of inner loop experience there. So that's what that set of technologies is about.
Cool.
Yeah. But, we did, Preview 6, I think, came out, was it last week?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what I'm running right now, Preview 6. And we've pretty much kept to the monthly preview cycle for .NET 5, which is what we set out to do. So I think from February or March this year, we've had monthlies ever since, and we'll have those all the way through till we release at the end of the year in November. And so I think there's going to be an RC or two in there as well, obviously before we release like we usually do. So I hope folks are trying it out and giving us feedback. But as well as .NET 5, the ASP.NET team has been working on some sort of side projects, which folks are probably aware of. Obviously, we shipped Blazor WASM as 3.2, which was kind of an add-on to 3.1 at Build this year. And then that team, the folks working on that, immediately switched over to getting Blazor WASM part of .NET 5, and that's going to be in the next preview of .NET 5. Blazor WASM will now be available in .NET 5. And then the other things that ASP.NET has been doing is you may have seen Project Tie, right, which is that sort of microservice-y mini developer orchestrator for running multiple projects at a time. And then having them run in containers. You can run them directly, you can run them in containers, you can even run them in Kubernetes or deploy them to Kubernetes. And for folks who haven't seen that, I encourage you to go and check that out. I think it's at /Microsoft/Project Tie. Is that where it is?
We did a show with them too, with the team a little bit ago.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that one's pretty cool. And then we have...
Did you get the WSL2 stuff working on your machine?
So the VS one or the...
I've got the VS one right here. Right.
Yeah. So that's some other stuff that's been going on. Just before we get to that, because that's a good segue or good thing that's related. Yep. The other thing is YARP. So a bunch of the ASP.NET team has been working on YARP. I'm sorry.
I'm going to just ask you to say that again.
YARP. Yet another reverse proxy. And so... I think we've talked about that as well, and I think Hunter and Hanselman spoke about that at Build this year as well. And so there's been these sort of side projects that aren't part of .NET 5 but are being worked on during the same time frame that are going on. And then as Scott just mentioned, there's been some tooling stuff going on regarding containers as well. So were you going to show that off?
Yeah, if it's okay with you.
Go for it.
All right. So we need to streamline this process a little bit because not being able to see is hard. So right now, you can see my screen?
Yep.
There we go. Okay. So this is Hansel Minutes. This is the website. The website has unit tests and the website itself. there's a little bit of weirdness here. I'm not sure if you know about this, Damien. The Docker file lives at the solution level.
Yeah, it rings a bell, but I can't remember the detail.
Well, anyway, as such, I find it frustrating that it's not visible.
Right.
There's a way to bring it up and mention it, but I have my own custom Docker file, so there might be some Thai stuff here to help me out a little bit with this. But I do a couple of things with the minutes. So if I bring up PowerShell and I go ZHAN, I've been using Z for all of my CDing lately. It's way better. So if I just go CDE, ZHA, it just remembers places you've been before.
Yeah.
And then I use PowerShell scripts for all of my things, and I put in my PowerShell scripts shebangs. That's a shebang.
Nice. So you can run them directly.
So I can run them directly in without the PowerShell extension using Linux.
Yep.
So that allows me to go and do something like this. So now we're in. Okay, now we're in Ubuntu. Okay. So then I can go to Mount D or whatever, or I could go home, right? And I want to be able to run this. In Ubuntu here, I've got .NET 3.1. And this is really, really Ubuntu. Okay. And I could go and pick Docker from here. There's a couple of choices you've got here, see? So I got IIS Express, run it in Kestrel in Windows, run it in Docker. I don't actually know what these are. These must be new, something that's coming soon. And if I click here and pull that down, does it change? No, I don't know what those are. Here you can see I've got the Edge browser, and I've got WSL2 set. So then I hit WSL2. Oh, does it even build? That's embarrassing.
There's finally there's an option to disable that dialog. So where it says your build
one
failed,
where
do you want to run the previous build?
This worked yesterday.
This is previews for you.
Well, hang on though. So let's go back. We can always just declare, failure.
We could, or we could try and fix it.
Or we could figure, because it worked yesterday, which means get status. So what were we doing before? What's a good way to get what's everything that's changed? Like I want a pretty git diff is what I want. See, when I do that, I don't get it in color.
Right. You can use VS Code.
There's git K.
VS Code has built-in stuff for that, right?
Does it?
Yeah. Just go to the
okay, I added this.
history.
I added that because you wanted me to test something. I pulled HSTS out into debug.
Into the block.
Container tools added that. This looks like some bad
Line
endings, yeah.
Line editing chaos. What's happening in there? What a nightmare. What is that about? Oh my God.
It's a J business. I'm not.
Oh, Jay, you don't know what this?
I don't.
Oh, my friend, buckle up, son. If I show you my database, I've got a bunch of this. This is a great tip. I love this tip. What do you think about it?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are things that if we were Rails, we would just do.
Yeah. I thought it was built in like L for localization or something like that, right?
It's built in my world.
Is it? Yeah. It's a good world.
So manage extensions. It's probably an internal build. I did this. I installed this a couple of days ago when Mike Morton gave me a copy of it.
Right.
Like
here it is.
He pulled it out of his overcoat and passed you a USB.
Pretty much.
Well,
he slid it in a manila, in like an unmarked manila envelope across the virtual table.
Is it not installed?
Right there.
Installed all.
What's roaming extension manager?
Oh, that's nice.
What's that?
It roams your extensions. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's something I haven't thought about in a while.
Ooh.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it for a while, but it does roam your Visual Studio
Okay.
Windows desktop, like it roams your extensions based on
Oh,
your
no.
logged in user.
Well, the fact that I can't see it in here
Yeah,
means
that
I've
sounds
flickered it
bad.
up, but it's here.
Yeah.
And this is weird though.
I don't know what that is.
I don't even know what that is.
No.
Yeah. So I've
Broken.
made a horrible mistake.
That's okay.
This is
Oh,
why
I
you
know
need
what
code
I know what's
spaces.
wrong.
Are you in the wrong VS?
That's the wrong. I'm on a wrong VS.
Yes, I was going to ask if you have multiple channels
See?
installed.
You know what's the deal. Hang on. I'm
You're in
loading
the
actual VS.
internal preview, not preview.
That's just chaos. No, that's just regular preview. I don't run internal stuff because I want to run what the people run.
Well, it all depends on, I generally run normal preview, but it all depends on whether there's something new I really want to try to give feedback before.
Yeah, I'd have to want it. I'd have to want it badder.
Yeah.
Badder.
More?
The baddest.
Yeah, I don't want it that badly. All right.
There we go.
L2. This is Build Vision. This is lovely. Have you seen this?
No.
It's a prettier what's building now. So if you have a project with like 5 or 10.
Where'd you get that from? Is that an extension?
It's an extension.
Who is that from, like the community or from us?
I think it's in the community. So
Ooh.
here we go. That's what I wanted to show you. So there's .NET Core debugging for WSL2 preview. Daily, nightly build.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to show that. Here's Build Vision by Stefan Kurt.
Nice. I will
Build process visualization. It's scrumptious. It deserves more than 50,000 builds.
I need to do that. It's funny because this week I've been spending a bunch of time in Procmon, literally watching build processes.
Look what this does. It actually does all the timing for you.
It's part of the perk work.
That's
Yeah.
nice.
See?
Does he capture bin logs for you as well? And then does it work with the bin logs?
He pulls it out and sticks the error down here.
Yeah, that's
amazing.
Okay, so Build Vision. Build Vision.
I'm going to try that one out.
All right, so this is my podcast on port 5001, the time that I interviewed Poe from Altered Carbon. Just
as one does.
As one does. He's a lovely, lovely gentleman. But if you look down here, look at this.
Yeah.
You see inside of Visual Studio.
Yeah, Mount D.
Look at the differentiation between this and that. See? So what it's doing, which is quite clever, without me having to think about it, it used the .NET that's inside of my WSL2, but this WSL2 here, this code here rather, is done off the mount point.
Right.
So that's running it, my source built on Windows, but it ran within the context of WSL2. So that's in preview. That's coming soon. I think it's not quite preview. It's internal coming soon preview. But we launched it at build. So then your menu would look like this. So pretty nice stuff.
Very cool. Well, what I've been doing is one thing I figured out this week. I'll share my screen as part of this .NET Watch performance investigation. Let me see if I can get you back while I'm doing this. So my screen should be up now. Any hope? Any? Okay, beautiful. So you can see, I've been using Procmon. Oh, here was my network, by the way.
You're going to need to make your, everything's going to be bigger and zoomier.
Yeah, I totally. It's not important what we're seeing particularly there. This might be more important, and the file that I wanted to show. So what I realized, I had 3 machines here, and I got the Surface Book 3. I've got this Dell workstation. And then I've got my personal machine that's running that TV over there. And I was just doing like these types of tests. So I'd open the console. And how do I zoom in terminal?
Control scroll wheel works, doesn't it?
Control plus.
Look at that. Beautiful. So if I go and look at in this folder, I've got a console app. And I just did a .NET build. Now, this should be an incremental build, meaning there's no, because I've already built this project before. And if I just do it again, right, like how long does that take? And I wasn't particularly happy with how long it was taking. So if I'm in PowerShell, I can do measure command, which will give me...
You're still going to need to blow up a bit. Somebody's asking if this is code for ants.
There you go.
There you go, yep.
And so this tells me, it's taking on here, what, 1.6 seconds, 1.4 seconds, and I can just keep going. Now my machine's doing some other stuff at the moment, obviously, because I'm on a call. But that just seemed like it was too slow. This is literally .NET New console, and then .NET build, and then .NET build again. So no NuGet packages to restore, and the build will no op because it realizes that the input files haven't changed since the last time it built. Right, the input files are older than the DLL. That's how it knows it has nothing to do effectively. Right, and so like if I was to say, well, what is just the overhead of running the CLI? I could just say, well, what's measure command .NET build -- help. Right, because that will measure everything up until the build command in the CLI executes. But then the first thing it's going to go is like, oh, it's just the help argument. So let me just spit out the help, right? And so that takes about 1/4 of a second. So on this machine, my floor in terms of performance, in terms of elapsed time to run this CLI command is 1/4 of a second before I can even start thinking about doing an actual build, right? And so I was like, okay, that seems slow. Let me try some other machines. And what I found was on my personal machine over here, it was less than a second. It was consistently like 900 and something milliseconds. And on my Surface Book 3, it was just a little bit quicker than this machine, which again was a bit of a surprise because this machine is a 8th gen. I think it's a Core i7-8700. So it's 6 cores, hyper-threaded, it's got 32 gig of RAM, and it has an SSD, NVMe SSD, for its primary drive, which is what VS is on, it's what the SDK is on, what's all the code is on. So I was like, that's really strange. And so I took some profiles and I sent it to one of the people on the performance team. And he was like, well, it looks like it was a couple of things, a bit about antivirus going on in this one, but it wasn't a lot. There was some prefetch going on the Surface, but I was able to turn that off. But it just looked like I/O was quicker on my personal machine. But it was strange because it's 4 years old. And so then I ran Atto. Now, those who don't know what Atto is a disk performance benchmark. Well, they have a bunch of benchmarks, but the disk performance benchmark is what I was interested in. And so my personal desktop one, which is coming up, the results for are coming up now, looked like this. Now, can I zoom that in? Is that going to work? Ah! That's really
yeah,
good.
Well, sort of.
All right, can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So note on the very small file sizes here, the speeds here. So like read and write around 400 megabytes per second at 4 kilobytes, right? And 200, 150. It's almost linear, right? As we doubled the size up until 16, it kind of stopped being linear, progress. Well, it's actually not linear because it's doubling every time, so it's quadratic, I guess. So that was my baseline for my personal desktop, and then I opened, did it again for this one is my Surface Book, for example, here, and look at the comparison. So what you might notice is depending on the file size, it's either faster or slower. So this SSD is much faster on bigger files, right? It goes over 3 gigabytes per second,
right,
whereas
but much slower on
yeah, but look how much slower it is. It's like half the speed for these smaller files. It doesn't catch up until it gets to 32 kilobytes.
But if you phrase this instead of like long tail, but looked at it as a bell curve, and then thought about the average size of a .NET file.
Yes.
Which
or NPM or
NPM.
Yeah.
And what's the average size of a .NET source code file? You would basically do a measure object. You'd
right.
dir
so the
star.cs.
files are the text files, right? So they're going to be fairly small. And then the DLLs that get loaded from the framework aren't that big. They range from, and your own DLLs will range from a couple of kilobytes all the way up to a few hundred, right?
But bigger than 16 to 32, which is where things start making differences.
Well, no, it actually depends. And so for the smaller files, for operations that involve very small I/O, for those less than 16 kilobytes, my 4-year-old, 5-year-old SSD in this machine, which was a Samsung 950 Pro, which was the fastest NVMe drive at that time, is faster for those smaller files, right? Whereas the Toshiba NVMe SSD that's in this Dell is just slower than both of them. Like it's just slower for smaller files and slower for bigger files. But that was enough, even for this smallest build operation, to lift that floor from about a second to a second and a half. And so, and that adds up, because once you start doing sort of inner loop or .NET Watch on a Blazor app that might have 3 projects, or a bigger set of projects, like Orchard Core was another one that I was testing, and that has like 100 projects. Then those little changes can really start to add up to how responsive, with regards to how responsive it feels. And so it was just something I found interesting. Like this one has, in theory, that machine has the worst CPU of all of these, because it's a 6th gen i7. But its SSD is better at small file I/O, and so it was just better at these incremental builds. For an actual build where it had to perform work, so the CPU actually got busy, it might be different, right? It might end up that the bigger CPU at that point overtakes the advantage of the smaller files when it actually gets to doing computation as part of the compilation. But it just goes to show how difficult trying to optimize these types of experiences can be, because depending on what type of build you're doing or what type of interaction you're performing with the CLI, different aspects of your hardware, your OS configuration, etc., can have an impact. I also tried out my Linux laptop. So I have my Dell Precision 5520 laptop here that I bought about 3 years ago, and it's running Ubuntu 18, I think. I don't think I've upgraded yet. And I did the same test there, and it was faster than these 2 machines, but not quite as fast as that one. And so different OS, different AV setup, different I/O drivers. This has a Samsung SSD in it as well, a little bit newer than the one over there. And so, yeah, these are the type of things we're trying to figure out, and how can we make this thing as fast and as interactive, and for all the people who are using it. So the other thing that came out was starting processes is expensive, and if you can avoid starting processes.
That is a Windows thing.
Yeah.
So it's 2 things. There's the Windows thing, and there's just the overhead of booting up another .NET process and rejitting a bunch of stuff that you may have already jitted. Mm-hmm. You want to not do that if you can avoid it.
Are you frozen, Damien?
Yeah, my Teams keeps freezing my video. Like, I don't know why. It's running.
It seems like when you share your screen and then you come back,
I just toggle my camera on and off. I don't know if it'll fix it, but that's all right.
All right. Scandalous, regardless.
There you're back.
There it is. Teams has gotten better on very many things, but there's still some wacky, occasional video things. I guess video on the internet is hard.
That's true.
Is it though?
It's pretty wild how much, how well it works, actually. Like, I helped with the Juneteenth conf, and we did all the stuff using StreamYard, and we had multiple things going at once, and people like helping host from Europe and everything. And it's like, I guess we kind of take for granted how, science fiction-y it almost is.
Damien and I used to have a very, very expensive appliance called a Cisco Umi that I feel like just now today we have reached this level of that quality. Yeah. That was 7 years ago.
Maybe more. It was in building 42.
It was UMI umlaut over the U, and it was the
Did you get it from
first.
IKEA?
No, you had to. It had a dedicated hardware. Had a big camera with a big sensor, dedicated hardware encoding, and you had to pay a subscription fee to use their service. But it was effectively, I think at the time you described it as like DVD to or Blu-ray to Blu-ray.
It was Blu-ray to Blu-ray. It was so different from anything we'd ever seen. It was like punching a hole in reality itself.
It was beautiful. But now we discovered HDMI capture cards and large sensor cameras. So the one other thing I was going to talk about with performance was, because we like to geek out on hardware on this show sometimes, was the new AMD laptop chips. So I know a bunch of folks have bought on Twitter the new, the ROG Zephyrus G14 by Asus, which is technically a gaming laptop, but it actually looks pretty good. I don't know if folks have seen this before, but it's a 14-inch. But the big thing is it has these new 8-core AMD Ryzen 9 chips in them, the 4900 HS. The S is their lower wattage, 25 watts chip, or 35 instead of 45. But it's crazy. You can put 40 gig of RAM in it, and you get 8 cores, 16 hyper-threaded, plus apparently it's very efficient, and it's all in a 3.5-pound, 14-inch chassis. I would love to get my hands on one of these to try it out. to compare it to the smattering of devices that I have around here and see if it makes much of a difference in VS and those types of things. So I'm excited about it.
It's amazing how they've kept up. Like anytime you throw all that horsepower in, you also have to cool it and you need battery for it. It's amazing how all those things have.
I know, like I don't know what its battery. It has a GTX 2060 in it as well, and 120 hertz gaming display is an option as well. So I imagine if you're doing all of that at the same time, its battery isn't going to be fantastic, just like any gaming laptop or any workstation. But the fact that these types of performance pieces are now becoming available in this is like a $1,200, $1,300 laptop US is pretty amazing. I think if you spec it up, it's more than that, obviously. But in terms of starting point. But I remember saying on this show 4 or 5 years ago that I never believed quad core laptops would ever be a thing, ultrabooks specifically. And then literally at the end of that year, I had to eat my own words because like the Surface Pro came out with the Surface Pro 4 or whatever it was that came out with the Intel quad core chips in the 15-watt part. So like there's been some amazing advancements in the last few years. In all of those spaces, and so I still like a desktop though. I can't lie. I do like this working from home where I get to use my desktop.
Even another sort of related thing, but with the whole GPU thing, is we recently, James Montemagno and I set up some VMs using the NV. Yeah, and they're NV class VMs in Azure, and there's promo pricing, and if you use the promo pricing SKU, it's about $1 an hour.
Oh, interesting.
And it includes the GPU acceleration. So
you can do video encoding on them.
Yeah, you can use the GPU video and the HVAC or whatever it is, and so you can set that up as your video encoder.
That's pretty cool.
So we actually have those set up as a backup, because we're doing all these stand-ups now. We have these, of course we started with the Tuesday ASP.NET ones, and we've been doing those, of course. Now we've got Thursday rotating through all the languages and tools and Visual Studio and Xamarin
Mobile and EF and
Well, so the EF is on Wednesday, and then
they have their own.
Yep, and we're so it's now that we've got everyone hosting these from home, we need backups if they're ever having computer trouble or if we have so we set up these Azure VMs to handle that, and I was kind of skeptical that it would actually work, but I set it up and we did streaming tests and we're like,
it works pretty well.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I've seen a lot more people taking on the live coding thing as well. Jeff's Fritz has got his live coders or what are they called? Coding streams? Live coders group. But and then there's like a whole bunch of folks who have just started now that a lot of us are working from home, who to start up doing that. I created a channel and then broadcast the fact I was going to do it and got like 150 followers, and then I haven't done one yet. So it's still on me to do my first.
F5.
Thank you.
I've got a list of all the things I'm going to do. I just haven't done one yet. I just keep buying equipment and playing with things and not actually doing the streaming.
Well, so one of the things that I've found is helpful is I thought I was going to lay this thing out and try to do live coding, but I found that I would do a YouTube video with minimal editing.
Yeah.
So I was going to do one tonight on Git basics. I've been doing a bunch of stuff on my YouTube. I've got a section on computer stuff they didn't teach you in school.
Yep.
Because I was meeting a bunch of people with just bump into errors. One of them was carriage return line feed error. And it's like, how would you ever learn that, right? So I just hit record and I talk and I hit pause.
Yep.
I find that more comfortable than live coding. So
interesting. I've got a list of both. So I've got a list of topics I wanted to do is like recorded videos that are 10 or 15 minutes to just show you how to do one thing. And then I have a list of stuff that I just want to go in. I know it's going to take me a few hours, but it might be interesting for folks to watch like I've done in the past. So I haven't done either of them yet, but I have both of those. I think the only thing I did is I recorded a practice presentation for your talk at Build. So that you folks could learn how to do it. And that was fun. Hey, so I do have to find some time to do that.
Here's a question. This is random, but I'm looking in the chat here.
Yeah.
Daniel Llewellyn says he loves it when Scott shows us stuff and then questions whether it was allowed. I'm pretty sure it was allowed.
Yes.
I mean, like, why wouldn't it be?
The only thing you showed was the WCL V2 thing, right?
I don't know.
I think there is always is
that the thing that's going to get me fired? Like, I don't know. Like, I meant well. I mean, I could get a talking to.
Right.
There's always a danger when we share our desktops that we accidentally show something we're not supposed to yet. But
I mean,
you than me.
It's part of the idea with the stand-up is it's a little bit like informal and we're just talking. Maybe we'll make a mistake, but
this is true. But
it's not like a nuclear launch code.
Well, so remember we talked about this. There was this idea of if you get in trouble, you need to get in trouble twice a year, or you're not doing your job hard enough.
That's right. You're not pushing the envelope enough.
So I usually just at the start of the year, I just steal something. Like when I'm on campus, it's harder lately, but I just steal some
like
stuff.
Shoplifting?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I just walk through and I just knocks out, and then I would think that would get me in trouble. I don't know.
I'm not sure that's the kind of trouble that Scott was alluding to.
Oh well.
Yeah. But no, I tend to agree to an extent. You want to try and push. You got to find the right thing to push on every year with good intentions. Like the whole point is you're pushing on it in order to extend and push forward some shared goal. It's not just your goal. It has to be something that benefits customers and the division at large, right? But yeah, sometimes you'll accidentally overstep and you go, oh, okay, whoops, I'll pull back and lesson learned and off you go. But it seems to have worked okay.
In general, too, the whole kind of thing of being worried about giving away a secret. I mean, of course, we have things with conferences and stuff, but for the most part, Microsoft and especially .NET and DevDev are so open now, and everything's on.
Oh yeah,
on GitHub.
The .NET stuff in particular.
I don't worry very much, about that.
Well, and like anything on .NET is being worked on GitHub, right? So anyone who wants to see what's coming,
I guess it's that the tooling isn't right.
The tooling is not. So like VS. For example, is not, and so that's why.
But I know that I showed it at Build, so that
you
makes
did show it at Build, yeah. That's right.
Good. All right, so it's probably okay.
Probably.
I mean, I don't know. Like maybe it's not. I don't know. Just make Hunter not watch this, and it'll be fine.
It'll be totally fine. Yeah.
Hey, am I in focus? Like not like in life, but in this video?
No, you look a little out of focus.
Soft focus.
Soft focus. There you go.
Soft focus.
I messed around. I bought a camera. Well. It was a hack that ended up being a so-so hack. I bought a camera that had a variable focus, and I bought a lens for it, and then it wasn't great.
There you go. That's clearer.
That looks better. You have autofocus on though, right?
No.
Oh, you turned it off?
I don't trust autofocus. I don't like that moment where you kind of go blurry and then not blurry.
It just means that you can't.
I only live
hold something up and show it. It means you can't do this.
If I hold something up, I go over here.
No, fair enough. Okay. All right. You had an answer for that.
Let's go to camera 2.
That's right. Let's go to the overhead shot, shall we?
Wow.
Yeah. All right. Now we're just warbling.
Yeah.
Are there any questions?
I have not been following them. It's just random stuff.
It is?
Yeah.
I'm looking just to see.
I don't know.
It's just random chat pretty much today. Which, I mean, we have been so focused and technical and kept right to the agenda, and I'm really frustrated that people are not asking us questions.
Extraordinary.
Well, I have a special surprise for the
You do?
Well, not for you, Damien.
Oh, okay.
You know about this special surprise because you actually provided me with bits to it.
I did.
We can actually end the show in a proper way.
Okay, let's see it.
It's called the dramatic zoom out.
What? That's crazy.
Yeah. Okay, but so that will end the show. So are you ready to end the show with the dramatic zoom out?
I think so.
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready.
All right.
It's been good to see you all.
But it's going to be it's going to be like a delayed zoom out though, right?
Yeah, well, so there's only one problem, and I'm sure it can be optimized. It's going to do the stinger transition to it, and then we will zoom out.
I think the stinger is too long, with all due respect.
It's a little bit long. It's dramatic. It's a dramatic stinger.
Just throwing it out there.
Okay, you ready? See if it happens.
I'm looking. I'm watching.
We're looking at your ear though.
I know because I'm watching the TV.
Wait though.
Oh! I
it
see
has
something.
happened.
Oh!